If you'd told me 14 years ago that I'd end up exiled from my own home by a wet poodle and my wife's ex-husband, I would have laughed until my ribs ached. Now? Not so much. I'm sitting in my Ford pickup, watching lightning crack the sky over the house I built with my own hands, listening to the rain hammer my windshield like nature's own drum roll before the main event. My name is Tanner Jossman, and tonight my wife threw me out of my own house. The irony isn't lost on me. 14 years of marriage, 12 years of mortgage payments, and countless weekends fixing everything from leaky faucets to broken dreams, and here I am, homeless in a storm, because I wouldn't let Colin Mercer, my wife's ex-husband, waltz into my living room like he owned the place. "Get out of my house! You don't belong here anymore!" Ayla had screamed those words 20 minutes ago, her face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. She stood there in our kitchen, my kitchen, pointing toward the door like some avenging angel, except angels don't usually wear designer jeans and have their ex-husbands lurking behind them with smug grins. Colin Mercer. Even his name sounds like something you'd scrape off your shoe. Mid-30s, slick hair, cologne that probably costs more than my monthly truck payment, and the kind of entitled smirk that makes you want to introduce his face to a brick wall. He works in finance, drives a Mercedes, and apparently thinks my house is his personal playground. I didn't argue with Ayla. Arguing with her when she's in full fury mode is like trying to reason with a tornado. Instead, I grabbed my jacket, my wallet, and my phone, and walked out into the rain. The storm hit me like a cold slap, but honestly, it felt warmer than the reception I'd been getting inside. The whole thing started 3 weeks ago, when Colin began showing up at our house. At first, Ayla said he needed help with some paperwork, something about their old joint accounts from before we got married. I thought it was strange, but I trusted my wife. Stupid me. Then the visits became more frequent. Lunch meetings that stretched into dinner. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room. Hushed conversations in the kitchen that stopped the moment I appeared. My wife, who used to tell me everything, suddenly became a vault of secrets. Tonight was the breaking point. I came home from the construction site to find Colin sitting at my dining room table, eating takeout from my plates, acting like he lived here. When I asked what was going on, Ayla exploded. "Colin is going through a rough time," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "His apartment lease is up and he needs a place to stay for a few weeks." "Then he can stay at a hotel," I replied, keeping my voice level. "This is our home, Ayla, not a boarding house." That's when Colin decided to chime in with his 2 cents. "Look, Tanner, I know this is awkward, but Ayla and I have history. We understand each other in ways that—" I held up my hand. "Stop right there. I don't care about your history. You're not staying in my house." Ayla's eyes flashed with something I didn't recognize. "Your house? This is our house, Tanner. Mine too. And I say Colin can stay." "And I say he can't." The argument escalated from there. Colin sat back and watched like he was enjoying a movie, occasionally adding fuel to the fire with comments about how controlling I was being. Ayla defended him at every turn, taking his side against mine in my own home. Finally, I'd had enough. He goes, or I go. That's when Ayla delivered her ultimatum. Her voice rose to a shriek that could have shattered windows. "Fine, then you go. Get out of my house. You don't belong here anymore." So here I am, sitting in my truck in the rain, watching my life fall apart through a windshield that's fogging up faster than my marriage apparently did. But here's the thing Ayla doesn't know, the thing that's going to make this night very interesting indeed. I reach into my glove compartment and pull out a manila folder I've kept there for years. Inside are documents that my wife has apparently forgotten about, or maybe she never knew about them in the first place. The house deed, the trust document from my parents, the utility bills, every single piece of paper that proves ownership of the property at 47 Maple Street, Red Ridge, Massachusetts. The house isn't hers. It never was. When my parents passed away 5 years ago, they left the house to me through a family trust. Ayla's name was never added to the deed. She insisted it didn't matter since we were married, and I never pushed the issue. Property law in Massachusetts is complicated, but the trust is ironclad. The house belongs to me, period. I pull out my phone and dial the sheriff's office. The dispatcher answers on the second ring. Red Ridge Sheriff's Department. This is Janet. Hi, Janet. This is Tanner Jossman. I need to report an unauthorized occupant refusing to leave private property. What's the address, Mr. Jossman? 47 Maple Street. The property is held in my family trust, and I have documentation. There are currently 2 people inside who are refusing to leave when asked. Are you the property owner? Yes, ma'am. I have the trust documents, the deed, and all utility bills in my name. I can email you copies right now if needed. Please do. Send them to email protected. We'll have a deputy out within the hour. I hang up and immediately forward all the documents from my phone. Modern technology is a beautiful thing when it works in your favor. While I wait, I drive down to the parking lot of Murphy's convenience store, about a quarter-mile from my house. From here, I have a clear view of Maple Street, but I'm far enough away to avoid any immediate drama. The rain is starting to ease up, but the lightning is still putting on quite a show. I think about Ayla inside the house, probably celebrating her victory with Colin. She always liked men who wore cologne instead of honest sweat. Colin represents everything she thinks she wants: money, sophistication, the kind of lifestyle she sees in magazines. What she doesn't realize is that Colin is a parasite. He's been circling our marriage for months, looking for an opening. Tonight, she gave him one, but parasites tend to flee when the host body fights back. My phone buzzes. A text from Pete Morrison, my old army buddy who runs Morrison's Auto Repair down on Industrial Avenue. Storm's getting nasty. You and Ayla doing okay up there? I text back. Define okay. Uh-oh. What happened? Long story. I'll call you tomorrow. Pete and I served together in Afghanistan. He's one of the few people in Red Ridge who knows the real me, not the quiet construction worker everyone sees, but the guy who survived 3 tours in a war zone and came home with skills most people can't imagine. Pete also knows Ayla better than she thinks he does. He's never liked her, though he's too polite to say so directly. An hour and 15 minutes later, I see the sheriff's cruiser turn onto Maple Street. Deputy Carter is behind the wheel. I recognize his driving style. Tom Carter is a good man, fair but firm, the kind of cop who actually reads the law instead of just enforcing his opinion. I start my truck and drive slowly back toward the house. I want to see this. The cruiser is parked in my driveway, and Deputy Carter is walking toward the front door. I park across the street, next to Mrs. Klein's house. She's probably watching from her kitchen window. The woman knows everything that happens in this neighborhood. Carter knocks on the door. Through the front window, I can see movement inside. The porch light comes on, and Ayla opens the door. Even from across the street, I can see her confident posture. She's probably thinking this is about a noise complaint or maybe someone reporting domestic trouble. I can't hear the conversation, but I can read body language. Carter shows her his badge and says something. Ayla nods and steps aside to let him in. Colin appears in the doorway, looking nervous for the first time tonight. They're inside for about 10 minutes. Then the front door opens again, and all 3 of them come out onto the porch. Carter is holding some papers, probably printouts of the documents I emailed. He's pointing to specific sections and explaining something. Ayla's posture changes dramatically. Her confident stance crumbles, and she starts gesturing frantically. She's arguing, but Carter isn't budging. Colin has backed away from both of them and is looking around like he's planning an escape route. Carter says something else, and Ayla's hands fly to her mouth. She shakes her head repeatedly, but Carter just points to the papers again. Then he says something to Colin, who immediately holds up his hands and starts backing toward his Mercedes. "This isn't my problem," I can almost hear Colin saying. "I was just visiting." Typical. The moment things get complicated, the parasite abandons ship. Carter goes back inside with Ayla, and they're gone for another 20 minutes. When they emerge, Ayla is carrying a suitcase and a shopping bag. Her face is pale, and she looks like she's been crying. Carter follows her with another bag. The deputy sets her bags on the porch steps and says something to her. She nods miserably and sits down on the top step, right in the drizzle that's still falling. Carter gets back in his cruiser and drives away. Colin's Mercedes is already gone. Of course it is. I wait another 10 minutes, then drive back to my house. Ayla is still sitting on the porch steps, soaked and shivering. When she sees my truck, she stands up and starts walking toward me. "Tanner?" she calls out, her voice small and broken. "Please, we need to talk." I roll down my window but don't get out of the truck. "About what?" "About this misunderstanding. About the house. I didn't know." "You didn't know what? That actions have consequences? That you can't just throw your husband out of his own home?" She starts crying then, real tears mixing with the rain on her face. "I made a mistake. Colin, he convinced me that we had rights, that the house was community property. You thought wrong. I put the truck in park and finally get out. Where's your boyfriend? He left. As soon as the sheriff explained about the trust, he just left." Shocking. I walk past her toward the front door. Absolutely shocking that Colin Mercer would abandon you the moment things got complicated. "Tanner, please, I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We're married. This is our home." I turn to face her. "No, Ayla. This is my home. You made that very clear tonight. You told me I didn't belong here anymore. Well, congratulations. You got your wish." I unlock the front door and step inside. The house feels different now. Colder, emptier, like something essential has been stripped away. The takeout containers are still on the dining room table, along with 2 wine glasses, evidence of the cozy evening my wife was planning with her ex-husband. Ayla follows me inside, dripping on the hardwood floor I refinished last summer. "Tanner, we need to talk about this like adults." "We did talk, 3 hours ago. You chose Colin over me, in my own house. How's that working out for you?" She doesn't answer. She can't answer, because we both know the truth now. Colin never cared about her. He was using her to get access to what I'd built, what I'd earned. The moment the sheriff explained that he had no legal right to be here, he vanished like smoke. "I want you to leave," I say quietly. "This is my home, too." "No, it isn't, and after tonight it never will be." She stares at me for a long moment, and I see something in her eyes that I've never seen before, genuine fear. Not of me, but of the consequences of her choices. For 14 years, I've been her safety net, her provider, her rock. Tonight, she threw all of that away for a man who couldn't run fast enough when the situation got real. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Maybe you should have thought about that before you kicked me out into a storm. She picks up her bags from the porch and walks to her car without another word. I watch from the front window as she drives away, her tail lights disappearing into the night. The storm has passed, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning. The house feels like a museum the next morning. Everything is exactly where it should be, but nothing feels right. I make coffee in the kitchen where Ayla screamed at me 12 hours ago, eat breakfast at the table where Colin sat like he owned the place, and try to figure out what comes next. My phone has been buzzing all morning. Missed calls from Ayla, text messages that I delete without reading, and 3 voicemails that I'm not ready to hear. The last call was from Nina Hartwell, Ayla's best friend and personal enabler. I let that one go to voicemail too. Around 10 o'clock, there's a knock at my door. I look through the peephole and see Mrs. Klein standing on my porch with a covered dish and the kind of expression that says she knows everything and can't wait to share. Eleanor Klein is 73 years old, has lived next door for 40 years, and has the supernatural ability to know everyone's business before they know it themselves. She's also one of the few people in Red Ridge who's always been straight with me. "Morning, Tanner," she says when I open the door. "Brought you some of my tuna casserole. Figured you might need a decent meal after last night's excitement." "Thanks, Mrs. Klein. That's very kind of you." She steps inside without being invited, which is typical for her. "Quite a show out there last night. That sheriff's deputy was very professional, explained everything clearly." "I'm sure he did." She sets the casserole on my counter and turns to face me with sharp blue eyes that miss nothing. "That Colin fellow sure left in a hurry. Tires squealing and everything. Almost ran into my mailbox." Course, I've been seeing his car here quite a bit lately, usually when you're at work. Sometimes he'd stay for hours." Now she has my attention. "How often?" "Oh, 3-4 times a week for the past month. Sometimes longer. Last Tuesday, his car was here from noon until almost 7. I remember because I was watching my stories, and he was still here when the evening news came on. I feel something cold settle in my stomach. Last Tuesday, Ayla told me she was working late on quarterly reports. She didn't get home until 8:30, claiming she'd grabbed dinner at the office. "Mrs. Klein, did you ever see them together?" She gives me a look that's equal parts sympathetic and knowing. "Honey, I don't like to gossip, but I've got eyes. They weren't in there playing checkers." The pieces start falling into place. The late nights at work, the mysterious phone calls, the way Ayla had been distant and distracted for weeks, the sudden interest in updating her wardrobe and taking better care of herself, all the classic signs that I'd been too trusting to recognize. "There's something else," Mrs. Klein continues. "That Nina woman was here last week. Her and Ayla were out on the back deck, talking loud enough for me to hear through my kitchen window. Nina was giving Ayla advice about something. Legal advice, sounded like." "What kind of legal advice?" "Something about property rights and common law marriage. Nina kept saying that Ayla had claims to the house whether her name was on the deed or not. Told her she should assert her rights before you figured out what was going on." The cold feeling in my stomach turns into something harder and angrier. This wasn't a spontaneous fight. This was a planned ambush. Ayla and her friends had been plotting this for weeks, maybe longer. They thought they could push me out of my own house and take over. They thought wrong. "Mrs. Klein, I appreciate you telling me this. That woman never deserved you, Tanner. Too good for the rest of us, always acting like she was slumming it in Red Ridge. Some of us remember where she came from." After Mrs. Klein leaves, I sit in my kitchen and think about the past few months. How many lies had Ayla told me? How many times had Colin been in my house while I was working? How long had they been planning to get rid of me? My phone rings. Pete Morrison. "Hey, buddy. Heard there was some excitement at your place last night." News travels fast. "This is Red Ridge. News travels at the speed of light. You okay?" "I'm fine. Ayla's gone." There's a pause. Gone? Or just temporarily gone? Gone. She chose her ex-husband over me, in my own house. Jesus, I'm sorry, man. Don't be. I'm starting to think this is the best thing that could have happened. You want to talk about it? I'm buying lunch at Murphy's. Murphy's Tavern is the closest thing Red Ridge has to a neutral meeting ground. It's where the working men gather to complain about their wives, their jobs, and the government, usually in that order. It's also where news gets spread and reputations get made or destroyed. I meet Pete there at noon. The lunch crowd is the usual collection of contractors, mechanics, and municipal workers. Pete's already claimed a table in the back corner, away from the main traffic flow. "So what really happened?" he asks after we order. I tell him everything. The surprise visit from Colin, the argument, Ayla's ultimatum, and my call to the sheriff. Pete listens without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head. "She actually said it was her house? Her exact words were, 'Get out of my house. You don't belong here anymore.' And this Colin character was just sitting there watching? Like he was enjoying the show." Pete takes a long drink of his beer. "You know what this sounds like to me? It sounds like they were trying to push you out so they could move in together." That's exactly what it was. Mrs. Klein says Colin's been coming around for weeks when I'm at work. Eleanor Klein sees everything. If she says they were up to something, they were definitely up to something. We eat in comfortable silence for a while. Pete's been my closest friend since we got back from Afghanistan. He's one of the few people who knows about the darker parts of my past, the things I learned in the army that don't translate well to civilian life. He also knows that I don't get mad. I get even. So what's your next move? He asks. I don't know yet, but Ayla made a big mistake last night. What's that? She declared war on me, in public, with witnesses. Pete grins. And you don't lose wars. No, I don't. As if summoned by our conversation, the front door of Murphy's opens and Ayla walks in with Nina Hartwell. They're both dressed like they're going to a business meeting instead of a working-class bar. Every conversation in the place stops as they scan the room. Ayla spots me immediately. Her face goes pale, but Nina whispers something in her ear and they start walking toward our table. The entire bar is watching now, waiting to see what happens next. Tanner, Ayla says when they reach our table, we need to talk. No, we don't. Nina steps forward. She's a lawyer who specializes in divorce cases, which explains a lot about her attitude. Actually, you do need to talk. There are legal issues that need to be resolved. Pete looks at Nina like she's something unpleasant he found on his shoe. Lady, this is a private conversation. This concerns my client's rights to marital property. I stand up slowly. The bar has gone completely quiet now. Even the bartender has stopped washing glasses. Your client has no rights to my property. The sheriff made that very clear last night. The house may be in your name, but Ayla has contributed to its upkeep and improvement over 14 years of marriage. She has legal claims. Really? What contributions? Because I built that house with my own hands. I paid for every improvement, every repair, every upgrade. Ayla's contributions consisted of complaining about the color of the kitchen cabinets. A few chuckles ripple through the crowd. Nina's face flushes red. She's entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. Then she can have half of the debt too, half of the mortgage payments, half of the property taxes, half of the utility bills. I'll send her the invoices. This is ridiculous, Ayla finally speaks up. Tanner, we're married. We can work this out. I look at her for a long moment. She's wearing makeup to cover the evidence of last night's crying, but her eyes are still red and swollen. She looks smaller somehow, diminished. We were married, I correct her. Past tense. You ended that when you chose Colin over me. I made a mistake. Colin took advantage of me. He told me things about property law that weren't true. Where is Colin now? She doesn't answer. Let me guess. He disappeared the moment things got complicated. Left you to clean up the mess by yourself. That's exactly what happened. And now you want me to fix it for you. Like I've been fixing everything else for 14 years. The crowd is eating this up. Nothing entertains working men more than watching a cheating wife get called out in public. Nina realizes they're losing the room and tries to regain control. Mr. Jossman, my client is willing to be reasonable. A simple property settlement. Your client is welcome to be reasonable somewhere else, preferably far away from me. I throw a 20 on the table and stand up. Pete follows my lead. This isn't over, Nina calls after me. I turn back to face her. You're absolutely right. It's not over, it's just getting started. The entire bar erupts in conversation the moment we step outside. By tonight, everyone in Red Ridge will know that Ayla Jossman tried to steal her husband's house and got thrown out by the sheriff instead. That went well, Pete says. That was just the opening act. What do you mean? I look back at Murphy's Tavern, where Ayla and Nina are probably trying to salvage what's left of their dignity. Nina's right about one thing. This isn't over, but she's wrong about who's going to win. That evening, I'm in my workshop behind the house, trying to lose myself in a furniture project, when my phone rings. Unknown number. Hello? Tanner? It's Colin. I almost laugh. You've got some nerve calling me. Look, I know last night got out of hand. I wanted to apologize. Apologize for what? Trying to steal my house or abandoning my wife when your plan fell apart? It wasn't like that. Ayla told me the house was community property. You thought you could move in and take over. How'd that work out for you? There's a long pause. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would have been staying away from my wife in the first place. She called me, Tanner. She's the one who reached out. She said she was unhappy, that you two were having problems. And you just happened to be available to help with those problems. I still care about Ayla. We have history. You have history. I have a house, a business, and a reputation in this town. Guess which one matters more? I hang up and immediately block his number, but the call tells me something important. Colin's trying to manage the situation, which means he's worried about something. Maybe his job, maybe his reputation, maybe both. I make a mental note to find out more about Colin Mercer's professional life. Knowledge is power, and I have a feeling I'm going to need all the power I can get. The war has begun. The next morning brings rain again, but lighter this time. More like a persistent drizzle that makes everything gray and miserable. Perfect weather for what I have planned. I'm sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the local newspaper, when I remember something important. When Ayla lost her phone last year, I set up the Find My app on all our devices so we could locate each other in emergencies. She never removed my access, probably forgot it existed. I pull out my laptop and log into the family iCloud account. Sure enough, Ayla's phone shows up on the map, currently located at the Riverside Motel on Route 9. The same motel where she's apparently been staying since her dramatic exit from my house. But here's what's interesting. According to the location history, her phone has been making regular trips to some very specific places. Colin's apartment complex, Nina's law office, and most intriguingly, a storage unit facility on Industrial Avenue. Why would Ayla need a storage unit? I spend the morning doing some research, a few phone calls to people I know around town, some casual questions, and a little creative investigation reveal some interesting facts about my wife's recent activities. 3 weeks ago, Ayla opened a storage unit at Secure Space Storage. She paid for 6 months in advance, cash. The same week, she withdrew $5,000 from our joint savings account. Money I thought was for emergency car repairs. 2 weeks ago, she opened a new checking account at First National, the bank across town from where we normally do business. No joint access, just her name. And last week, she met with Nina Hartwell 3 times. Not just casual coffee dates, but formal meetings at Nina's law office. This wasn't a spontaneous decision to choose Colin over me. This was a carefully planned exit strategy. Ayla had been preparing to leave for weeks, maybe months. The only thing that went wrong was her assumption that she could take my house with her. Around noon, my phone rings. The caller ID shows Ayla's number. What do you want? Tanner, please. We need to talk like civilized people. I thought we did that at Murphy's yesterday, in front of half the town. That was Nina's idea. I didn't want to make a scene. You made a scene the night you threw me out of my own house. Everything since then has just been consequences. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this if you'll just listen to me. I'm listening. There's a pause, like she's surprised I agreed. Can we meet somewhere? Somewhere private? Where? What about the park? The one where we used to walk when we were dating. Riverside Park. Neutral ground, public enough to be safe, private enough for a real conversation. Fine. 1 hour. Thank you, Tanner. I really think we can work this out. I hang up and immediately call Pete. I need a favor, I tell him. Name it. Ayla wants to meet at Riverside Park in an hour. I want you to be there, but not obviously. Can you handle that? You think she's up to something? I know she's up to something. The question is what? Pete chuckles. You want me to bring my camera? That's not a bad idea. An hour later, I'm sitting on a bench in Riverside Park, watching the Connecticut River flow past and waiting for my wife to arrive. Pete is somewhere in the trees behind me, close enough to help if needed, but far enough away to avoid being seen. Ayla arrives exactly on time, which surprises me. Punctuality was never her strong suit. She's dressed casually, jeans and a sweater instead of her usual business attire. She looks tired, older somehow, like the stress of the past few days has aged her. "Thank you for coming," she says, sitting down on the opposite end of the bench. "You said you wanted to talk, so talk." "I want to apologize. Really apologize, not the legal nonsense Nina was pushing yesterday. I made terrible decisions, and I hurt you, and I'm sorry." "Okay. That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say, Ayla? That it's fine? That we can pretend none of this happened?" "I want you to say that our marriage means something to you, that 14 years together is worth fighting for." I turned to look at her directly. "It did mean something to me. Past tense. You're the one who decided it was worthless." "I never said that." "You didn't have to say it. You showed me. When you chose Colin over me, when you tried to throw me out of my own house, when you spent weeks planning your exit strategy without telling me." Her face goes pale. "What do you mean, exit strategy?" "The storage unit. The new bank account. The meetings with Nina. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" She stares at me for a long moment, and I see the exact instant when she realizes that I know everything. Her shoulders sag, and the apologetic mask slips away. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter how. What matters is that you've been planning to leave me for weeks. The only thing that went wrong was your assumption that you could steal my house in the process." "I wasn't trying to steal anything. Nina said I had rights." "Nina said what you wanted to hear, just like Colin told you what you wanted to hear. And now you're sitting here telling me what you think I want to hear." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You're not sorry about what you did, Ayla. You're sorry it didn't work." She stands up abruptly. "Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth. Yes, I was planning to leave you. Yes, I was trying to figure out how to get my fair share of what we built together. And yes, Colin was helping me. There we go, honesty at last. You want to know why? Because I've been miserable for years. Living in this small town, married to a man who's perfectly content to build other people's houses and never dream of anything bigger. I see. I'm 36 years old, Tanner. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in Red Ridge, watching you come home covered in sawdust and talking about property taxes. So you decided to trade up. Colin represents the life you really want. Colin understands ambition. He has goals, plans for the future. He's not content to stay in the same place doing the same thing forever." "Where is Colin now?" She doesn't answer. "Let me guess. As soon as the sheriff explained that your plan wasn't going to work, Colin discovered that his feelings for you weren't as strong as he thought. He's dealing with some complications at work." "What kind of complications?" "It's not important. But I can see in her eyes that it is important. Something's wrong with Colin's situation, something that made him run when things got difficult." "Ayla, let me ask you something. Did Colin ever actually say he wanted to be with you long term? Or did he just say he wanted to help you get away from me?" We discussed possibilities." "That's not an answer. He said we needed to take things one step at a time. Which means he was using you to get access to what I'd built, and you were using him to escape what you saw as a boring life. How's that working out for both of you?" She starts crying then, but they're angry tears, not sad ones. "You don't understand. You've never understood. I had dreams, Tanner. I had plans for my life that didn't include being trapped in a small town forever. Nobody trapped you here. You chose to stay. You chose to marry me. You chose this life. I was young. I didn't know what I wanted. And now you do? Now I know what I don't want. I don't want this. She gestures around the park, at the town, at me. Everything that's been my whole world for the past 14 years, she's dismissing with a wave of her hand. Then go, I say quietly. What? Go. Leave. Find your dreams somewhere else. But you're not taking my house, my business, or my reputation with you. Tanner, we're done here. I stand up and start walking away. Behind me, I hear her calling my name, but I don't turn around. The conversation is over. The marriage is over. Now comes the interesting part. That evening, I'm in my workshop when Pete shows up with a six-pack of beer and a satisfied expression. How'd it go? I ask. Got everything? Audio and video? Your wife's a piece of work. What do you mean? After you left, she made a phone call. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. She was talking to someone about changing tactics, about finding other ways to pressure you. Other ways? She mentioned something about your business, about contracts and permits. Sounded like she's planning to cause problems for you professionally. I take a beer from Pete and consider this information. Ayla works in human resources for Pinnacle Construction, one of the largest contractors in the county. They don't compete directly with my small operation, but they have connections throughout the industry. If Ayla wanted to make trouble for my business, she could probably do it. There's something else, Pete continues. While you two were talking, I saw a car parked across the street. Looked like it was watching the park. When your wife left, the car followed her. What kind of car? Black sedan. Couldn't see the plates, but it looked official. Official how? Like government official, or maybe private investigator. This is getting more complicated by the minute. First, Ayla's planning to steal my house. Now there are mysterious cars following her around town. Either I'm paranoid, or there's a lot more going on here than a simple marital dispute. Pete, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to find out everything you can about Colin Mercer. Where he works, what he does, who he knows. Everything. You think he's the key to this? I think he's the reason Ayla suddenly got brave enough to try pushing me around. And I want to know why. Pete grins. Consider it done. You know how much I love a good investigation. After Pete leaves, I sit in my workshop and think about the conversation in the park. Ayla's mask had finally slipped completely. She wasn't sorry about what she'd done. She was sorry it hadn't worked. She wasn't trying to save our marriage. She was trying to minimize her losses. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd declared war on me publicly, in front of the whole town. Now everyone in Red Ridge knows that Ayla Jossman tried to steal her husband's house and got thrown out by the sheriff instead. In a small town, reputation is everything. And Ayla's reputation is about to become a very interesting problem for her. I pull out my laptop and start making a list. Names, addresses, phone numbers, relationships. Everyone who matters in Red Ridge. Everyone who influences opinion. Everyone who makes decisions that affect people's lives. It's time to start fighting back. The next morning brings news that changes everything. Pete calls me at 7 a.m. with information about Colin Mercer that makes my coffee taste bitter. You're not going to believe this, Pete says. Your wife's boyfriend isn't just some finance guy. He's a forensic accountant who specializes in asset recovery for divorce cases. What does that mean? It means he's a professional marriage wrecker. He finds hidden assets, tracks down money trails, and helps lawyers maximize settlements. He's been doing it for 3 years, ever since his own divorce. The pieces click into place like a puzzle solving itself. Colin didn't just happen to reconnect with Ayla. He targeted her specifically because he knew about my family's property holdings. The house, the construction business, the trust fund from my parents. He'd researched all of it before making his first move. There's more, Pete continues. Colin's in trouble with his licensing board. Apparently, he's been getting too personally involved with his cases. There are ethics complaints, accusations of improper conduct with clients. How many clients? At least 3 that I could find. all wealthy women going through divorces. Colin helps them maximize their settlements, then starts relationships with them afterward. And if the settlements don't work out the way he planned, he disappears, moves on to the next target. I think about Ayla sitting in that motel room, probably waiting for Colin to call her back, not understanding that she was never anything more than a mark to him. Pete, I need you to do something else for me. Name it. I need you to find out who was in that black sedan yesterday, and I need you to be very careful about it. You think it's connected to Colin? I think Colin's in more trouble than just ethics complaints, and I think Ayla's about to become collateral damage. After Pete hangs up, I sit in my kitchen and consider my options. Part of me wants to warn Ayla about what Colin really is, but a larger part of me remembers her standing in this same kitchen 3 days ago, screaming at me to get out of my own house. She made her choice. Now, she can live with the consequences. Around 9 a.m., my phone rings. The caller ID shows the number for Pinnacle Construction. Mr. Jossman? This is Rebecca Torres from Pinnacle Construction. We need to discuss some concerns about your current projects. What kind of concerns? There have been questions raised about your permitting and inspection procedures. We're going to need to review all your current contracts to ensure compliance with county regulations. I feel that familiar cold anger settling in my chest. Who raised these questions? I'm not at liberty to say, but we take all compliance issues seriously. I'm sure you do. And I'm sure this has nothing to do with the fact that Ayla Jossman works in your HR department. There's a pause. Mr. Jossman, I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it directly. My wife is using her position at your company to harass me professionally because our marriage is ending. That's a very serious accusation. It's about to become a very serious problem for Pinnacle if you don't handle it properly. I hang up and immediately call my lawyer. Tom Bradley has been handling my business legal work for 5 years. He's expensive, but he's good. Tom, I need you to send a letter to Pinnacle Construction. Today. What kind of letter? The kind that explains the legal consequences of allowing an employee to use company resources for personal vendettas. What's going on, Tanner? I explain the situation. Tom listens without interrupting, occasionally making notes. This is actually pretty straightforward, he says when I finish. If Pinnacle takes any action against your contracts based on complaints from Ayla, they're opening themselves up to massive liability. I'll have a letter on their desk by noon. Thanks, Tom. Tanner, can I give you some advice? Sure. Document everything. Every phone call, every conversation, every interaction. If this turns into a legal battle, you're going to need evidence. Already on it. That afternoon, I'm at the Riverside hardware store picking up supplies when I run into Nina Hartwell. She's standing in the paint section, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Tanner, she says when she sees me. I was hoping we'd run into each other. Were you? I think we got off on the wrong foot the other day. I was just trying to protect my client's interests. Your client tried to steal my house. How exactly were you planning to protect that? It's not that simple. There are legitimate property issues that need to be resolved. No, there aren't. The sheriff made that very clear. Nina looks around to make sure we're not being overheard, then steps closer. Look, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Ayla is in a very vulnerable position right now. Vulnerable how? She's staying at a motel, she has no income, and she's made some poor decisions about who to trust. You mean Colin? I mean Colin. That man is not what he appears to be. This is interesting. Nina's throwing Colin under the bus, which means she's figured out that he's toxic to her client's case. What exactly are you trying to tell me, Nina? I'm trying to tell you that Ayla was manipulated. Colin convinced her that she had legal rights to your property. He told her that you were hiding assets, that you were planning to leave her with nothing. And you believed him? I believed my client. But I've done some research since then, and Colin Mercer has a very questionable professional history. So what do you want from me? I want you to consider a reasonable settlement. Something that allows Ayla to start over without destroying either of you financially. I look at Nina for a long moment. She's a good lawyer, which means she's smart enough to know when her case is falling apart. The fact that she's approaching me directly instead of going through formal channels tells me everything I need to know about how weak Ayla's position really is. Nina, let me explain something to you. Ayla chose to leave our marriage. She chose to try to steal my house. She chose to trust a man who was using her. Those were her decisions, and she's going to live with the consequences. Tanner, I'm not interested in settlements. I'm not interested in negotiations. And I'm definitely not interested in helping Ayla clean up the mess she made. You're making a mistake. This could get very ugly very quickly. It's already ugly. Ayla made sure of that when she decided to involve the whole town in our business. I leave Nina standing in the paint section and head for the checkout. But her warning sticks with me. Things are about to get uglier, and I need to be ready. That evening, I'm working in my shop when Mrs. Klein appears at my door with another casserole and a worried expression. Tanner, honey, I think you should know something. What's that? There was a man here today asking questions about you. Said he was from an insurance company, but he didn't look like any insurance investigator I've ever seen. What kind of questions? Questions about your work schedule, your habits, who comes and goes from the house. I told him it was none of his business, but he was very persistent. What did he look like? Tall, thin, expensive suit. Drove a black sedan. The same car Pete saw following Ayla yesterday. Someone is investigating me, and I have a feeling it's not for insurance purposes. Mrs. Klein, if that man comes back, I want you to call the police immediately. Don't talk to him, don't answer his questions, just call 911. You think he's dangerous? I think he's working for people who want to cause me problems, and I think you should stay away from him. After Mrs. Klein leaves, I call Pete. We need to meet, I tell him. What's wrong? Someone's investigating me, professionally. I need to know who and why. Where do you want to meet? Your shop, 1 hour. Pete's garage is perfect for private conversations. It's isolated, soundproof, and Pete has security cameras that cover every approach. If someone's watching me, I want to know about it. This is escalating fast, Pete says after I explain about the investigator. Too fast. 3 days ago, this was just a marital dispute. Now there are professional investigators and ethics complaints and mysterious phone calls. You think Colin's behind it? I think Colin's part of something bigger. The question is what? Pete pulls out a folder thick with printouts. I've been digging deeper into Colin's background. You're not going to like what I found. Tell me. Colin Mercer isn't just a forensic accountant. He's also a private investigator. Licensed in 3 states, specializes in asset recovery and surveillance. Surveillance of who? Wealthy men going through divorces. He identifies targets, gets close to their wives, gathers intelligence, then helps maximize the settlement. How many times has he done this? That I can prove? 7 times in the past 3 years. But I think there are more. I feel that cold anger building again. But this time it's different. This isn't just about my marriage anymore. This is about a professional con artist who targeted my family. Pete, I need you to do something for me. Something that might be a little outside the law. How far outside? I need to know everything about Colin's current situation. His finances, his legal problems, his other targets. Everything. Pete grins. Now you're talking my language. And I need to know who hired that investigator, because I don't think Colin can afford that kind of surveillance on his own. You think he's working for someone else? I think Colin Mercer is a small fish in a bigger pond, and I think Ayla got caught up in something way over her head. What are you planning to do about it? I think about Ayla sitting in that motel room, probably still believing that Colin cares about her. I think about Nina trying to negotiate a settlement for a case that was doomed from the start. I think about some stranger asking my neighbors questions about my personal life. I'm going to end this, I say. All of it. How? By giving everyone exactly what they deserve. Pete nods slowly. You want my help? I'm counting on it. Then let's get started. The breakthrough comes 2 days later, courtesy of Pete's creative approach to information gathering. He shows up at my house Thursday morning with a laptop and the kind of satisfied expression that usually means trouble for someone. I found him, Pete announces, setting up his computer on my kitchen table. Found who? The man behind the curtain, the guy who's been pulling Colin's strings. Pete opens a file containing photographs, financial records, and what looks like surveillance reports. The top photo shows a man in his 50s, silver hair, expensive clothes, standing next to a luxury car. Meet Richard Blackstone. He runs something called Blackstone Asset Recovery. It's a company that specializes in maximizing divorce settlements for wealthy clients. How does it work? Simple. Wealthy woman wants to divorce her husband. She hires Blackstone. Blackstone sends in someone like Colin to get close to the husband, gather intelligence, identify hidden assets, and create leverage. What kind of leverage? Whatever works. Adultery, financial impropriety, professional misconduct. They manufacture situations that force favorable settlements. I study the documents Pete has spread across my table. Financial records showing payments from Blackstone to Colin, email exchanges discussing the Jossman target, surveillance reports detailing my daily routines. Pete, how did you get all this? Let's just say Colin's computer security isn't as good as he thinks it is. This is illegal surveillance. They've been watching me for months. Gets better. Look at this. Pete shows me an email chain between Colin and Blackstone. The plan was simple. Colin would seduce Ayla, convince her to leave me, then help her claim half of my family's assets in the divorce. The house, the business, everything. But it went wrong, I say. Completely wrong. They didn't know about the family trust. They thought the house was marital property. So when Ayla tried to throw me out and it backfired, their whole plan collapsed. Worse than that, look at this email from yesterday. Pete points to a message from Blackstone to Colin. Target situation compromised. Abort operation. Eliminate evidence. Do not contact client again. They're cutting Colin loose. And leaving Ayla holding the bag. She has no idea she was being used by professional con artists. I lean back in my chair and consider this information. Ayla isn't just a cheating wife anymore. She's a victim of an elaborate fraud scheme. The question is, what am I going to do about it? There's more, Pete continues. Blackstone has done this at least a dozen times in the past 5 years. They target men with significant assets and complicated family situations. The success rate is about 80%. What happens to the women they use? Most of them never find out the truth. They think they just got lucky with their settlements. But a few have figured it out and tried to fight back. What happened to them? Blackstone has very good lawyers and very thorough investigators. People who cause problems tend to have problems of their own. I think about the man asking Mrs. Klein questions about my habits, about the mysterious phone calls to Pinnacle Construction, about Nina's sudden interest in a quick settlement. They're trying to pressure me into settling. They're trying to salvage what they can from a failed operation. If you agree to give Ayla a substantial settlement, they disappear, and everyone pretends this never happened. And if I don't, then they make your life very difficult until you change your mind. I stand up and walk to the window. Outside, Red Ridge looks exactly the same as it did a week ago. But everything has changed. My marriage, my reputation, my sense of security. All of it has been manipulated by people I've never met for reasons that have nothing to do with me personally. Pete, I need you to copy all of this and send it to Tom Bradley. Then I need you to send copies to the State Attorney General's office and the FBI. You're going to turn them in? I'm going to destroy them, but first, I'm going to give Ayla a choice. What kind of choice? The choice to be part of the solution or part of the problem. An hour later, I'm sitting in my truck outside the Riverside Motel, watching Ayla's room. Her car is in the parking lot, but the curtains are drawn. I call her number. Tanner? What do you want? I want to talk to you. Face to face. It's important. I don't think that's a good idea. Ayla, you're in danger, real danger, and I'm probably the only person who can help you. There's a long pause. What kind of danger? The kind that involves federal crimes and professional con artists. I'm in the parking lot of your motel. Let me in. 5 minutes later, I'm sitting in Ayla's motel room, looking at the wreckage of her life. Clothes scattered everywhere, empty takeout containers, tissues and makeup scattered across the small table. She looks like she hasn't slept in days. You said I was in danger, she begins. You are. But first, I need you to answer some questions honestly. When did Colin first contact you? About 2 months ago. He found me on social media, said he'd been thinking about me. What did he want to talk about? At first, just catching up. Then he started asking about you, about our marriage, about our finances. What kind of questions about our finances? He said he was concerned that you might be hiding assets from me. He offered to help me figure out what I was entitled to if we got divorced. Did you ask him to do that? No, he volunteered. He said it was what any friend would do. I pull out my laptop and show her the emails Pete discovered. Ayla reads them in silence, her face growing paler with each message. This isn't possible, she whispers. It's not only possible, it's documented. Colin works for a company that specializes in manipulating divorce settlements. You were never his girlfriend, Ayla. You were his target. She stares at the screen for a long moment, then starts crying. But these aren't the angry tears from our conversation in the park. These are the tears of someone who's just realized how completely she's been betrayed. He said he loved me, she says. He said whatever he needed to say to get you to cooperate. But we were together, intimately. How could he fake that? It's his job, Ayla. He's done this to at least 7 other women. She covers her face with her hands. I destroyed our marriage for nothing. You destroyed our marriage because you chose to trust someone else over me. The fact that he was lying to you doesn't change that. So what happens now? That depends on you. What do you mean? I close the laptop and look at her directly. I'm going to destroy these people. I'm going to make sure they never do this to anyone else. But I need to know whose side you're on. I don't understand. Are you going to help me stop them? Or are you going to keep pretending that this was all just a misunderstanding? What do you want me to do? I want you to call Colin. I want you to arrange a meeting. And I want you to wear a wire when you do it. You want me to spy on him? I want you to help gather evidence that will put him and his employer in prison. And if I do that, then maybe we can both move on with our lives without looking over our shoulders. And if I don't, then you're on your own. Because these people aren't going to just disappear, Ayla. They're going to keep pressuring me until I give them what they want. And they're going to use you to do it. She's quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Finally, she looks up at me. What would I have to do? 2 hours later, Ayla is sitting in Tom Bradley's office, getting fitted with a recording device and coached on what to say. Pete is monitoring from his van in the parking lot. I'm watching from across the street, waiting for Colin to arrive. The plan is simple. Ayla calls Colin and tells him she needs to see him urgently. She's going to say that I'm threatening her, that she needs his help to force a settlement. If Colin takes the bait, he'll incriminate himself and Blackstone on tape. At 4 p.m., Colin's Mercedes pulls into the parking lot of the diner where they're supposed to meet. He looks nervous, constantly checking his mirrors and scanning the area. He knows something's wrong, but he doesn't know what. Ayla goes into the diner first. 5 minutes later, Colin follows. Pete confirms that the recording equipment is working perfectly. From my position across the street, I can see them through the diner's front window. Ayla is playing her part perfectly, looking desperate and frightened. Colin is leaning forward, talking rapidly, occasionally glancing around the restaurant. 20 minutes later, Colin stands up abruptly and heads for the door. Ayla follows, still talking. They have a brief conversation in the parking lot. Then Colin gets in his car and drives away quickly. Ayla walks to Pete's van and gets in. A few minutes later, Pete calls me. "We got him," Pete says. "Everything. The whole operation." "What did he say?" "He admitted that Blackstone hired him to target you. He admitted that the plan was to steal your assets through a fraudulent divorce. And he threatened Ayla when she said she wanted out." "Threatened her how?" "He said that people who don't cooperate with Blackstone tend to have accidents. He said she should think very carefully about her next move." "That's enough. Call Tom Bradley and tell him to contact the FBI immediately." "What about Colin?" "Colin's about to have a very bad day." 6 hours later, FBI agents arrest Colin Mercer at his apartment on charges of wire fraud, extortion, and racketeering. The same day, Richard Blackstone is arrested at his office in Boston. Within a week, the entire Blackstone asset recovery operation is shut down. But the best part comes 3 days later, when I'm sitting in my kitchen reading the morning paper. The front page of the Red Ridge Gazette has a story about the arrest, complete with details about how the FBI investigation started with a tip from a local resident who discovered he was being targeted by the criminal organization. My phone rings. It's Ayla. "I saw the paper," she says. "Good. The story makes you sound like a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who doesn't like being manipulated." "Tanner, I need to ask you something." "What?" "Do you think there's any chance we could try again? Start over?" I look around my kitchen, at the house I built with my own hands, at the life I've created for myself. It's quiet here now, peaceful in a way it hasn't been for months. "No, Ayla, there's no chance of that." "Why not? We were both victims in this." "No, we weren't. I was a victim. You were a volunteer." "That's not fair." "You chose to trust Colin over me. You chose to try to steal my house. You chose to destroy our marriage. The fact that Colin was lying to you doesn't change any of that. So what happens now? Now you figure out how to rebuild your life without me. And I do the same thing without you." "Tanner." "Goodbye, Ayla." I hang up the phone and pour myself another cup of coffee. Outside, it's starting to rain again, but this time it doesn't feel like a storm. It feels like a cleansing. 3 months later, the divorce is final. Ayla gets nothing except her personal belongings and the debt from her failed schemes. Colin Mercer is serving 5 years in federal prison. Richard Blackstone got 15 years and forfeited all his assets. I'm sitting on my front porch watching the sunset over Red Ridge when Mrs. Klein appears